Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming to share the first in this term's Garrod seminar series focusing on organic archaeology's wetland futures. The series has been organised by the Fenscapes team because we work with beautiful waterlogged and organic archaeologies on a daily basis, courtesy of the vast wetlands to the north of Cambridge here. But we know that for many archaeologists, it's a dryland record, and that the organic remains that we look at may seem more distant or perhaps sometimes irrelevant to your work. We're hoping to make all of us over these 8 lectures think much more carefully about how we can make our archaeology more organic and to bring the wood, for example, at Kalambo Falls in Zambia, into our imagination and into our interpretations of the human past on a more regular basis. So this afternoon, we're really delighted to have Professor Larry Barham here from the University of Liverpool. He has been working in Zambia for 30 years, and as a legacy of that work has more recently, I think it surprised and inspired all of us with the discovery of the 500,000-year-old wood, amongst other things, at this incredible site. But we know that he's also very active in cultural heritage and conservation in Zambia, and is passionate about lots of other things in archaeology that he will no doubt explain this afternoon. So, thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank all of you for allowing me to share my research with you. The title is a bit strange, maybe, the Wood Age at Kalambo Falls. And this term, the Wood Age, is something I said in reply to a journalist when the paper came out in Nature in 2023. And they said, what are the implications of finding this 500,000-year-old wood? And I said, well, maybe we need to rethink our terminology and just broaden the Stone Age and think about the Wood Age, because wood is a ubiquitous material in most, certainly tropical environments. So that went down. Then it was picked up, the Wood Age, by the team at Acheulean when they published a follow-on paper saying, we have the Wood Age here at Acheulean, so maybe something's happening, I don't know. But it hasn't reached the wider public fully, definitely. Taylor Swift, everybody hear this? She came to Liverpool, and I went to our publicity team to invite her in, because we have the wood in the department. See if she wants to come and see some old wood. Shouldn't have phrased it that way. She said no. So anyway, I'll move on quickly. No, I didn't mean to say that. That's true. You can expect digressions on that score. Let me give you a little bit of structure of what I want to talk about. I want to introduce the indirect evidence for woodworking in the Palaeolithic. By that I mean there's no wood surviving. There's just the traces of its shaping. And then the direct evidence, looking at it on the time scale of when the first evidence appears, and then questions on that first evidence. And then I need to give the Kalambo Falls project a context. It was a research project, still running in terms of the post-excavation work. And it sets the question, because the project, Kalambo is part of an aim, an objective of the deep roots of humanity. So yeah, that needs to be talked about. And then giving credit where credit is due, there's a long history of research at Kalambo Falls, starting in 1953 with Desmond Clark. So talk about Clark's work, setting the context for our work, and then the piece of, there's no other way to describe it other than serendipity. I didn't expect to find the wood in 2019. That was not part of the project. But I think serendipity is an important part of scientific research, and there are seats at the front. Yeah, don't be scared. Don't spit too far. And if you're going to make an extraordinary claim that we're going to have a structure 500,000 years ago, you need extraordinary evidence. I want to outline the approach we took to addressing taphonomic issues, behavioral issues, and then also introduce you to some the ongoing work. And I'll ask you, please don't take any images. We'll not show the ongoing work. We hope to publish some of this to add to the corpus of with information we already have, and then conclude briefly with the implications for how we think about the Paleolithic based. This whole project has flipped my mind as well, how it's revealed my assumptions and my biases. So I will share those with you as well. Okay, let's take a very long view, starting with 6 million years ago. This is the record of the amplitudes of climate change and how they change over time. So these are all glacial cycles. So 6 million years to 3 million years, early hominin record. We have no archaeological record until just about 3.3 million years ago. Does that mean there's no woodworking, no tool making this period, that far back? No, it doesn't mean that. It's just we just do not have the evidence for it, but we can assume it, I think, based on the primate record of certainly organic tool use. The archaeological record with the indirect evidence for tool use starts about 2.93 million years ago with the older one. I'll show you just an example of that in a moment. Then we pick up again with some indirect evidence for woodworking again in the Acheulean or the Acheulean, however you want to say it. And then the first evidence for direct woodworking is about 800,000 years ago. It's not 100% convincing for everybody, but when we get to 500,000 years ago, this is convenient here, drop, that's Kalambo Falls. And then put Kalambo Falls in context, this is us, Homo sapiens, 300,000 years ago. So you can see the woodworking predates us. Neanderthals probably work wood as well. So it's not just, this is part of the biases that are exposed. It's not Homo sapiens that does all the good things. Image here of the site from the site of Nyayanga in Kenya, about 2.93 million years ago. It's one of the earliest older one sites. And I'll show you this exciting picture of two flakes in the core, because the flakes are interesting. They have been analyzed for their uses. There's butchery at Nyayanga. They have two hippos. That's butchery. They're processing plants. This is useful evidence. And there are 5 flakes, and you hang on to these dearly 5 flakes because they show woodworking. It's the first evidence we have of woodworking. So if that's woodworking 3 million years ago, what were they doing? We don't know. But they are using this material, this ubiquitous material in the landscape. Wood is flexible, it's big, it can be big, you can use branches, you could give there's fruits on the trees, leaves are edible, the medicinal properties. Were they all aware of that 3 million years ago? We don't know. But when you think about what you can do with a stone flake and a branch, you can make a sharp tip. And that's one of the most effective tools, the digging stick. And we have, certainly with chimpanzees, the sharpening of sticks on tips with teeth. But we don't have the teeth to do that, but perhaps that's what they're doing here. 300. Why am I struggling with numbers? I am 3 million years ago. Anyway, in the Acheulean, we have on bifaces, hand axes. We have indirect evidence in the form of vegetable fibers. 1.5 million years ago, we have phytoliths from the site of Minj in Tanzania. More recently, from Olduvai Gorge, 1.35 million years ago, we have use-wear traces on heavy-duty stone, based on a reference collection. So this is all the kind of indirect evidence, but it shows that it goes back, woodworking back in time. Okay. So the direct evidence. Let's look at the pieces of wood that actually survive. The earliest we have is from Israel, from the extension of the Rift Valley, a waterlogged site called Gesher Benot Yaakov, which is Jacob's Bridge. Right? And it's 780,000 years ago. There's thousands of pieces of wood preserved in this site. Extremely well preserved, pistachios, for example. But there's only one piece that has some kind of modification, and this is it. It's 23 centimeters long, relatively flat, and this was published in 1991. They call it a polished piece of wood, and the polishing, they say, is anthropogenic. And talking to other colleagues who are working with Paleolithic wood, there's a slight disquiet emerging now. Is that this is the evidence we now expect much more in terms of surface analysis, this is a piece of work which is ripe for redoing. The Clacton spear, 400,000 years ago, associated with fauna. Yeah, that's you can see there's a big jump in time. From China, southwest China, 360,000 years ago to 250,000 years ago, we have some sticks. I'll show you those in a moment. Schoenigen, most people are familiar with the Schoenigen spears. In fact, this is the 30th anniversary of their discovery back in October. These are in the peat deposits. And there are other things now, throwing sticks, double-ended pointed sticks. The use is not clear, but they're not necessarily used for subsistence. And then coming through time in Italy, Puggettevecchi, thermal pools that preserve digging sticks, which have some evidence for the use of fire for softening wood and then enabling the shaping of it. That's the argument. Those are the earliest examples we have. It's a really patchy, poor record, isn't it? And I give that to you because this is the background in which to think about what you're about to see from Kalambo Falls. Okay. These are the digging sticks from Gampangpian. They are said to be used for digging up aquatic plants. I just put this up because as far as last time I looked, this paper still had not been peer reviewed, but it's online. That may change in time. So just take it with a little bit of disquiet, but not much. Okay. And this is some of the less dramatic components from Schoenigen, the throwing sticks. This is a reconstruction of using the sticks in fouling. And the point I want to make from these two images, the previous one and this one, is that most of what we're seeing, with the exception of Gesher, is the use of branches in the early record. People are shaping branches. And most of what we're seeing are tools that are subsistence related. Okay. I did mention need to put the Kalambo Falls project in the context of not just direct tools, but also a theoretical context and the question being asked as part of the research project. It's called the Deep Roots of Humanity project. This sounds trivial, but when applying for big funding, give it a big title. That helps, particularly if you're dealing with an audience that's not necessarily specialist. Anyway, we were successful. And the idea of the project was to fill a regional gap in our knowledge of the transition from the early Stone Age, this here, to the Middle Stone Age, in which you see a reduction in tool sizes, small pieces, small points, many of them hafted. So I have long been interested in the development of the putting of stones on sticks, of hafting. What it means is a conceptually new way of looking at tools. And when it appears, what context it appears, why it appears. But based in Zambia, I was aware that there's very little evidence of this transition. So that's why I wanted to look and see, bring the Zambian record into the conversation with East African records and the Southern African records, which are far more data rich and far more well dated. So dating was an important part of this project. Reconstructing the environmental context, important. Artifact function is important, and that's something that doesn't often get built into projects. So we had, it's a strange term, but we have an embedded primitive technologist, and that was his choice of words. Carl Lee. Carl is unusual that he makes a range of tools, stone tools, bone, wood, but he also uses them. So in a sense, he's got well-developed bushcraft skill set. He was with us at Victoria Falls and Kalambo Falls, our two main locations, using local materials and working with local people. So we have indigenous knowledge feeding into which woods to use for handles, for example, where stone resources were, where the binders might be in terms of the plant materials that are available, but also where to get animal skins as binders. It was fun, and it's still fun. But you're not going to hear about Victoria Falls, but we have a record there that's 770,000 years old. Yeah. Okay. I did say I've been thinking about hafting for a long time. I wrote a book in 2013 called From Hand to Handle, the First Industrial Revolution. And I argued in that book that hafting or combinatorial technology, to use the wider umbrella term, is something conceptually new. It's the beginning of a modular approach to technology, which is rather than taking a block of stone or a block of wood and removing pieces to make the final form, you are adding components to make a tool. So this is a modular technology, and hafting is the version we may be familiar with especially lithics experts. If you think of a stone cutting edge, here's a blade of a knife, the knife has a handle. How that handle and the blade work together is what I call the haft, because they need to be planned. They need to meet the function. They need to meet the engineering need of the use of the knife, the pulling of the knife, the tension that comes. And that has to be bound. You need to know that you have to have the knowledge of the binders. It could be an animal binder, it could be a plant binder. So what this represents are separate sets of knowledge coming together with a new set of knowledge of how they work together. That's why I think this is important. And combinatorial technology, in my mind, doesn't have to be about hafting. It can be about all the things we do that involve multiple parts. Everything in this room, clothes we're wearing, all of this is based on this concept of combining. And it has the advantage of extending the lift, so the reach, the amount of force we can apply. I hypothesized it increased task efficiency, so we measured that, and that's the basis of this paper in the Journal, Royal Society Journal Interface. And then you can start to speculate on the adaptable value, the ability to make a range of tools that increase your efficiency in extracting energy from the environment. Okay, just a fun picture here. Oh, good. It's a very loud one, but this is our experiment. We 40 rugby players, 20 female, 20 male, each. I tried this as well. This is extremely tiring, but each given a tool with a handle. So this is a hatchet, a limited amount of time, and standard piece of wood, and we measured the heart rate, oxygen consumption, muscle activity, we measured the movement of the upper body. Basically, we quantified and tested the efficiency hypothesis. And the answer is, for a given amount of energy that you put into working with a handle versus the same amount of energy with working without a handle, hafting is much more efficient. Just as an aside, try sometime using a hatchet without a handle and hitting a piece of wood. It's painful. But nothing else. Back to Zambia. The project started in 2017. The fieldwork ended 2022. COVID made a mess of it, but anyway, we've got there. And the HRC were very kind in extending, in case there's anybody here from the HRC. These are our two main localities, Kalambo at the top there on the border with Tanzania. Okay. Well, we moved to Kalambo. Just a little mention of the ecological context of Kalambo Falls. Today it sits in a woodland savanna. This is not a typical view of the African landscape, whether the East African more open savanna or maybe the rainforest of Central Africa. It's something in between. And this, perhaps you can't really get a sense of it, but it is verdant. The trees don't, the canopy doesn't quite close. Sunlight comes in, there's an undergrowth of grass there, which brings in the animals. It's a beautiful mix of plant and animal resources. And there's a digression. In the rainy season, there's a long rainy season of 6 months. It produces the largest mushrooms in the world. They are a meter across. They're edible. They're really nice, cooked in beer, and they're really tasty. And just a kind of awe moment. The mushrooms are so big. There's a little antelope called the dik-dik. It gets under there during the rains. That's just wonderful. So this is the extent of Nyombo, largest center of endemism in Africa. There's a wet Nyombo and dry. You don't need to know them. But when we look at the paleoenvironmental record that we have nearest to Kalambo Falls, and that's from Lake Malawi, we see a period of time, roughly 500,000 to 180,000 years ago, when there's stability. There's a forest There are woodland resources, including Miombo woodland. So we have a unique period of stability here, which is, I think, contributes to the story. So here's Kalambo Falls, South Central Africa, southern end of Lake Tanganyika. Has anybody been to Lake Tanganyika? Oh, yes, yeah. I just mention it because it's an extraordinary place. It's 700 kilometers long, 50 kilometers wide, 1,500 meters deep. It has its own ecosystem. And because it's so deep, as far as we know from the coring that has been done there, there's no period in the later Pleistocene where that lake has run dry. There's always been a place, I think, would have been attracted to humans and animals and plants. But these are the falls, second highest falls in Africa. The archaeological sites are behind that little pinch point, the little lip. The question is that how did deposits survive 500,000 years at Kalambo Falls? And our geomorphologist Ian Canby of Holloway argues that the water level there has always been controlled by the lip of the falls. I'll come back to that in a second. Well, I think it's the next slide. So that narrow lip has acted as a barrier for the rivers cutting down, the changing of the river level. But here we are, two views of the lip of the falls. Just looking, here's the lip. There's a little pool here, you see there, drops over one shelf, and then that runs through and it drops to 273 meters. The archaeological sites are up there. You turn around and then look downstream, and you see the Kalambo Gorge, Lake Tanganyika there. And before we started, I mentioned to Rachel and Phil that this is from the 2006 season. This is where we did our bathing. So we were camping up there, and we come down here, and knowing what I know now about how dangerous that was, we would never do it, especially with students. But the water has some force behind it. You get into the water, which turns, when in pairs, and it's covered with algae. It's very slippery. People will fall over. The bar of soap would go out of the hands and go over the edge. So nobody went over the edge. We did not use this in 2019. The health and safety form would have been okay. Oh, I think I jumped 2 slides. Yeah, let's just don't look at this for a moment. Let's come back to why we have a high water table which has lasted 500,000 years. First thing, get yourself a local tectonic basin that is opening and subsiding, so the sediments are dropping into the basin and then accumulating into the basin. Second, have a narrow lip fall in a difficult material that erodes very slowly, the quartzite here, and it acts as the base level for the catchment area to grade down to. And the river hasn't been sized below that lip, and dropped that lip as far as we know for a long time. That means the water table backs up and stays permanently backed in. I try to think of this, I try to imagine, as Ian Kennedy was explaining to me, as having a jug of water with a spout. You tip the jug and the water falls, comes out until it reaches just below the lip. But if you keep pouring a little bit of water in, so some kind of balance here, the water coming out, coming in, you retain the water table. So the water coming in from the catchment, Ian says, even during the driest phases of the Pleistocene was enough to keep the water table topped up. That's extraordinary. Let's accept that for now. We're still working on it and thinking about alternatives, but that's the working hypothesis. So we have a permanently elevated water level, creating permanently anoxic conditions for slowing down the degradation of organics. Sadly, there's no bone. It's a very acidic water, but it's been great for the preservation of wood. Most of the wood I'm going to show you has been covered, it's not just been waterlogged, it's been covered by a fine layer of clay, which has also kept the oxygen out. This is a piece of clay covering one of the artifacts, and when I took it off, it comes off in plates. In each plate, full of leaves, stems, seeds, and you realize they haven't been exposed until just then. And you watch in horror as the leaves start to curl. Oh God, I can't put it back. But we have a core in the fridge in Liverpool. I don't know what to do with this core. Maybe you could suggest something. I'm scared. You look at the thing. Anyway, extraordinary. Extraordinary individual, Desmond Clark, in 1953. He was then director of the Rhodes Livingston Museum, and he was prospecting around the area, and he saw what we saw, and what everybody's seen since. That when you drop down the cliff into the river, there are artifacts everywhere, under the water, just above the water. He started a set of large-scale excavations in 1953 through the late 1960s, produced 3 major monographs published by Cambridge University Press. This is pictures from 1953. And I'll just mention here, get a digression. Desmond was helpful in me getting my first job, which was at Bristol. He wrote a nice letter for me. Yeah. Thanks, Simon. Clark excavations are nicely labeled Site A, Site B, Site C, and Site D. I love the simplicity of Site A, B, C, and D. Outlined in black is Kalambo River in 1960. And the key site is B. Key site in terms of preservation of wood is this one. There's a little bit here in Site A. Now look at the river in 2019 in blue here. It's moved. It's come over here. It's abandoned this area back here. It's shifted a little bit along here. It's gone away from Site D. And damn it, it's destroyed Site B. It's gone. Let's just have a look at what's gone. This is Site B, 1963. There's the river. There's Desmond, and then there's wood down in here, and there are patches of organics, nuts and seeds, and what may be netting and things like that, pieces of bark. That area, like you see there, this is how it was before that was exposed. And this part in here is full of Acheulean tools. And they come down and you come to these big pieces. When I first saw this picture, I thought, have we got the foundations of a hut now? Well, that's just fantasy. I don't know. But we cannot go back because that is gone. Desmond reported, I think, 74 pieces of wood that he said were tool shapes. And he recognized that the tool shapes, though, might have been natural. They might have been caused by abrasion in the river. They are very tempting shapes, perhaps a throwing stick, digging sticks, but he was careful. In 2001, his final publication said, I cannot definitely say that these were humanly made, except for 3. And I'll show you one of the 3 in a moment. It's relevant to our story today. So, as well as the abrasion of the river, there's another problem with Kalambo, and that's Clark in his day, in the 50s and 60s, really had only one way of dating the site, and that was radiocarbon. And he published in 1974 that the Acheulean was at least 60,000 years old. And he tried to date the wood directly, and it just didn't work. Kalambo Falls, having been one of the great East African sites, just faded from discussion. It couldn't be really brought into discussion about the timing of this or that because it couldn't be dated. 2006, I decided to go to visit the site as part of just a spin-off from another project in Zambia. And I'm having a luminescence dating crew with us from University of Aberystwyth, Jeff Dullett. And Jeff was working with a new dating version of luminescence called thermally transferred. And here was an opportunity to go back to Kalambo Falls and actually try to get a decent radiometric chronology. And what came out of this was 500,000 to 300,000, bracketing the early to middle Stone Age transition. No wood, we didn't expect any, and that wasn't the purpose of the project. So 2019, let's go back to Kalambo Falls because there's a new dating technique that can provide a much more precise set of bracketing ages for the transition from the early to the middle stone. So we went back. And the aim was to go back to Site C North from 2006. And then before I say any more, I'll just say those of us who archaeologists who work in the fields, and particularly in the remote areas, know that things don't often go to plan, that you need a plan B, C, and a D, just in case things just don't become extremely difficult. So I had a plan B, which I used Google Earth to develop. And you use Google Earth to look for, I could see the river had moved, and I wasn't sure what happened to Site C North. So I had a plan B to look downstream, and I could see in the imagery here, a place where we might dig. Day one, Site C North is gone. Where you have a team of students, you've got colleagues from various Zambian institutions, they're all looking at you going, yeah, we're here for a month, what are we doing? I've got plan B, let's go. So plan B comes in. This is plan B. So we walk along here, and look at them down, you can see the sands, you can see artifacts. So we slide down on our bums, down to here, and then on the surface, the broken pots, broken stones, and you think, well, this is a mess. And then walking along the edge of the river, and then looking into the river, you can see that the river had cut through here, exposed wood. And exposed this piece here, that fits right onto it. And I'll show to you, that was day one. That changed the whole plan of the season. That's why I said this is a piece of serendipity. And what you see is the 3D photogrammetry of that object. It's a digging stick. And we now know it's from deposits 390,000 years old. These are the areas that we could see had been shaped. Okay, so we have 4 excavation areas, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the oldest, Unit 3, Unit 5, that's the next oldest, Unit 2, and Unit 4 is the youngest. We have a geological section off to the side, which is Unit 1, and off we go. Here's the section of the site, so this is the geological section. Importance here is the water level in the dry season when we were there, and the deposits below the water level are fine, unstructured sand, a bit of light deposit, a bit more fine sand and clay up here, and that typifies the environment in which the wood is preserved. The color bands represent the means, taking the averages of the dates and then the mean of the average for the luminescence dating. What turned out to be some very old ages turned into 3 separate sequences of the use of the site. When I say the use of the site, we're slightly at the mercy of geological forces that preserve the sand. We know there's a lot of erosion happening. Geomorphologist Ian Handy says, well, the wood is being preserved in low energy conditions. These are backwaters, sort of oxbows, where the main river has shifted somewhere else, and you have humans down on those sort of wet flats. Okay. He said you could be dealing with just a season, a dry season, when people are there, and then the following flood season, it gets covered, and the river moves on, comes back. So let's look at a moment at the dates. And the dating technique is this: post-infrared, infrared stimulated luminescence, which is a great mouthful to spit out. But the advantage of this technique is its longevity. It allows luminescence dating to be taken back 70,000 years. The normal luminescence that we used previously, which is just a single grain, at Kalambo Falls really only goes back about 50,000 years because it becomes saturated with the radiation. So this is what Jeff Dollar has provided for us, this sequence, 476,000 plus or minus 23. There's a reason why I'm reading out the error margins here. 390 plus or minus 25, 324,000 plus or minus 15. In 2006, we were getting error margins on the order of 20% big. These are on the order of 4 to 6% small. So that gives a sense of a feeling of reliability. And these are conservative, slightly conservative dates. We think the sites are actually a little bit older than this, but this is the conservative interpretation. Okay. So, sites site BLB3 and BLB5 are the oldest. So below river level by about half a meter here. This is a log, a tree trunk. There are marks, top marks on here, but they're random. So we weren't sure if they are anthropogenic. But around and underneath the tree are these extended patches of organic material. Seeds, nuts, shells, bit of bark, some bits of wood that have been chopped by machine, not machine, but by stone. Yeah, and then we found Coke bottles, and that's also magnet. So we found two tools. I'm going to show you one of them. Okay, this is the first one. Comes out of that organic mess there. It's wedge shaped. You can see it more closely here. The tip has been scraped. This part has been splintered. Up at the back, there's a depression where there's been force applied and a hole at the back. There's damage this way, so it's a percussion tool. I just named it wedge based on its morphology, but it is a very distinctive thing. So that's in the 476,000 plus or minus. There's one other tool, and I'll show it to you, but I'll ask you not to take photographs of the other one. BLB, the other old area, as we are just coming below the river, or I should say just in this mess here, every morning we have to look to make sure the snake wasn't in there. Desmond did say that this valley basin was full of snakes. He was right. We have a snake debriefing session before we start excavations, what to do, who to pray to. But every morning we had to look because there was a Gabon viper that lived in there. Yeah. And there were days we had to leave because the viper was out. That's a digression. Just want to give you a flavor of the field work. This is Maggie Katongo, curator of archaeology at the Livingston Museum with us. She's been part of the project from the very start. She's now at Rice University doing a PhD. Couldn't convince her to come to Liverpool because Liverpool wouldn't offer any money. That's bad times here. She's holding a beautiful cleaver with a slightly convex edge, concave, sorry. Current PhD student, Rachel. This is one of the well-preserved convex cleavers. Cleavers are important, come back to that. There are some less attractive tools which have been ignored by archaeologists for a long time. They're normally called core axes. They are asymmetrical and lumpy. There are a variety of forms that are fitted in under this impossible category. And there's one form which is asymmetrical this way, which we relabeled as a core as, because use-wear analysis is showing that these are wood-splitting tools. I can't say any more than that, because that's also paper in preparation. But they are big, some of them. So about this size, made from a single massive flake with a flat base. And the person who's doing the use-wear, Vera Rotz at the University of Liège, she describes these things as site furniture, because you're not carrying these around, they stay. Anyway. So, BLB. There's a lot of clay here, we're excavating, we're coming into a patch of clay, assuming it's just clay, and then suddenly, not a clang, but suddenly gets hard and realize it might be wood. So we shift to the excavation then with plastic spoons, so we're not marking the wood. These are from my kitchen at home, just happened to bring a pile of plastic spoons. So that's serendipity there. And then as this emerges, and here's a tree trunk, overlying a tree trunk here, the initial assumption was that this was taphononic. that the river had brought these two pieces together and just randomly deposited and then moved on. That's the working assumption. And as we started to clear back and spray these down, we could see chop marks on them, deliberate shaping. And it was only later that I started to think about something, well, the second day, we had a week on this site. It was the second day that I started thinking, what am I looking at? Because it reminded me of something that I couldn't work out what it was, but it became clear that I was thinking of a childhood toy. But if any North Americans here might recognize this, this is Lincoln log. Anybody recognize you? Yay, okay. So yeah, I had this, it has notches in it, and the notches connect, and they have a particular purpose. I'll come back to this in a moment, but that's how I started to get beyond the taphonomic interpretation once I saw the mark. Just a plan view during excavations, the lower tree trunk passing through here. I wanted to just show this to you because, yes, we have the U-shaped notch. We also have wood here. There's wood underneath here. There's wood there. There's wood in the section here. There's wood here. This tree trunk is still in the ground. We left a lot behind. There's just too much. But yes, and I hope that's still there when we go back. But let's look a bit more at this notch. It's an important part of the story, of the interpretation. But here's the notch lit from underneath, photographed underwater. At Liverpool, because when we brought this back, we had to keep it wet, and we kept it in big tanks. I'll show you the video in a moment. Once we were finished with the analysis, we sent this for conversation. Let's have a chat. This conservation work at the University of York. It took 3 years, and when it was on its way back, colleagues at York said you're going to see some things you didn't see before because there was a lot of iron concretions covering the surface here. They are gone. And when that iron has come off, you have this beautiful set of parallel striations within the notch, which were not visible to us the first time. So I had this feeling that, oh my God, let's rescind the nature paper and say, just wait, because there's a better one coming. But you don't do that. I just mentioned these parallel marks. Well, we've done some experimental work to get a sense of how they might have been formed. Come back to that in a moment. Excavation. Rachel said, talk about your methodology. About, during excavation. Well, this was it. Take a lot of photographs. This is while the wood is wet. So here's the notch, and then around the notch, you can see there are these sets of marks in here, chop marks. Having spent some time looking at the Somerset level stuff when I was at Bristol, I got used to seeing marks fresh from wet context. I quickly realized we've had a lot going on here. There's a lot of, that's what these white arrows are showing. It's an investment in the flattening of the surface around the top of the notch. It won't be able to really make sense at the back, and it doesn't, in a sense, doesn't really matter. But this is the underlying piece. You can see the top piece has been shaped, but the underlying piece has been shaped as well. So it's a tree trunk. We don't know how far back it goes this direction because that's still in the ground. There's an area where it's been debarked. There are debarking marks here. But the important part is this. This is what's called its shoulder. This has been shaped. The arrows giving you the shaping marks. These are, in a sense, the shaping marks in the roll. So the low tree trunk is coming in and it's dropped. And then it reaches a level when then it's flattened. These are the flattening marks. And it broadens like a duckbill. It's got a waist and then it broadens. Strange. So what is going on? Back to the notch, back to the Lincoln log. And you look around every possible contemporary piece of knowledge. Wow, this of course is, well, what is it? It's the saddle notch for making a log cabin. Were they making log cabins at Kalambo Falls half a million years America. I wouldn't dare say that because there's no real support for that, of course. But what the notch does is it stops the overlying piece from moving side to side, locks it in that direction. So in the linking log, you have a notch underneath as well as on top that stops it moving forward and back. That's not the case in Kalambo Falls. So stopping movement in one direction, well, there is a solution here. This shoulder stops that from moving much further than here. And kind of the duckbill shaping is wider than the notch on this side, so it stops it moving forward and back. I call this folk engineering because it shows a real understanding of the wood in relation to some particular purpose. And back, a couple slides back, more than that, there were some definitions I realized I didn't talk to you about the structure. They come from the Oxford Dictionary. But the structure in the dictionary mentions the combining of two parts to make a framework. That's what we have here. They are locked together, and then the top surfaces and the bottom surfaces of the overlying piece have been smoothed and shaped. The ends are tapered and deliberately tapered. Just playing with ideas, and I'm open to all the suggestions. Well, what is this? Maybe they're on a support, which is why this is flattened. Here's the underlying log. Wonderful suggestions come in every week still from the public. Last week, maybe they're engineering management of a water system. Some people suggested maybe they are some kind of surfboard. Where was this person from? Guess. California. Yes. I have had a comment that says, "We know that you know where Atlantis is." I'm not responding to that. But the important thing about what you're looking at there, this folk engineering, except the label, gives stability. It's managing the movements. But for me, it's the two parts that have been shaped and work together that have no purpose on their own, other than perhaps firewood. That says to me, this is a form of combinatorial technology. Does it mean it's the earliest we know? Well, it doesn't mean this is the beginning. That's the thing about these kind of discoveries. Now, on its own, what you just see is really interesting, but it just feels like a one-off. If you go to Clark 2001, when he's talking about wood, and the three pieces that he said he doesn't think are taphonomically shaped, but are deliberate. They're these. They are pieces with a notch, they're long, and they're tapered. This is the only one he illustrates. And he says in the description, these probably have some structural purpose. When I read this the first time, I thought, no, Desmond, you are pushing the interpretation too far. You really need more evidence. And I think, well, we brought that evidence to this claim from 2001. Desmond was right. Okay. So let me just quickly show you some of the other pieces. So this is the Dane one, embedded piece here, and then some of the clay around it. Together, we have this digging stick. 390,000 years ago, they been fine sands and clay. From BLB4, we have at first we thought this was a plank. It's a piece of a tree trunk with a set of chop marks at either end. So it's slightly lenticular. Then we realized there's bark on both sides. It doesn't make sense because the trees are not growing that way. It could be a buttress, but our wood anatomist, the British Museum, Caroline Cartwright, said no, looking at the cellular structure, that's a tree. So the question is, what's several questions? What's the function? But also, how did they chop this part out of the tree using the tools they had? This is cleaver from Kalambo Falls, from site C North, 2006. Well, what's interesting is that the breadth of the cleaving edge matches exactly the breadth of the chop marks we have on that piece. They're 13 centimeters on this particular form of the cleaver. So we think these are the tools. Then the question comes, how are they using it? From our experiments with chopping wood, handheld, it's really difficult. Here, even when the wood is green, it's hard to chop down a tree with a steel or a metal tip because they dull very quickly and break. Is this hafting? Are they using hafting as another form of combinatorial technology? And once you open your mind to the possibility that there is this wider conception of how to make things, of bringing things together, it doesn't have to be just stone. Stone on the handle, it could be with organics. Okay. Jaren Kabuku is our wood anatomist. She said, well, let's just see what's their knowledge of woodworking in terms of parts of trees. This is the overlying part of the structure. This is a tree. It's the complete width of this particular tree. Wedged in the other part of the tree. Log, you just look at it in the midsection. The digging stick from a branch. And there's another tool here, which I haven't talked about, to split a piece of wood, also from a branch. They're using all parts of the tree. What species are they using? We have the information from SEM work, Caroline Cartwright, and the one that's used most. We have a small sample of 5 pieces. The one that's used most is this one, Chondritum zeri. It's one of the Miombo trees today. And it's a tree which is used traditionally today as a source of timber for making houses, for making furniture, making posts. If you let it season, it's durable, really durable, and it's termite resistant. Do they know all of that? If we had a much, much larger sample, we could talk about wood preferences. That would be interesting. I'll just take you in the digression, but into Chondritum zeri. It's a small tree, 15 meters high, maximum 38 centimeters wide. Great timber when it's dry. The leaves are medicinal, so are the roots. And the roots are extraordinary. Because they make excellent baskets, and this is a trivet. It's made from Chondritum root, twisted tight, and some of the basketry is almost so tight that it holds water. The roots are also used to make nets. I can imagine nets 500,000 years ago. And off the record, since this is not being recorded, I regret not having kept all the material from the organic clusters that we saw, because I thought I could see individual strands, which I just thought were individual roots. Were they strands that had been twisted? Fiber technology would be fascinating at this point. Maybe something to look forward to. Okay, it's getting long. Let's just take you quickly through the approaches to how we know what we know. Let's just do that. So a combination of photography, surface analysis, and comparative analysis. I'll just make it this. Photogrammetry, we're also using this thing, RTI, reflectance transformation imaging, for surface analysis. Let me just show you rather than talk to you. Let's get this. During lockdown, we were keeping the wood in these big vats. We wanted to photograph them for photogrammetry and for RTI. For our senior technician, J.R. Peterson, devised this classic bit of British technology. The things that were floating around in the car park, put it together. I shouldn't tell you that, but here's the main section of the structure and the notch. And you can see some of the iron staining on it there. It was a clever piece of work. And J.R. Peterson also brought this to our attention, brought it to the project, and this is what we're doing now. This is reflectance transformation imaging. This is one of the tapered ends from the structure. You can see the grain really clearly now, in a way we couldn't see before, but we can also see that within the grain, they're working with the grain and scraping. You see the morphology of the marks versus the grain. You might just see in here, slight depression and a coral coming up. And using reflectance transformation, let's just let that go. Is it running? Oh, yes. Okay. This isn't like photogrammetry. I'll explain it in a moment, but it allows you to manipulate the source of light and highlight the differences in the surface structure, the surface texture, to locate areas for further analysis. There are different lighting, different surface textures that you can ask it to do. You're just trying to find the most obvious differences. This one called normal visualization doesn't look anything like normal visualization to me, but we're using it to come into one area here, and then we'll go back to the lighting here and find the maximum amount of relative contrast, and then we'll take it up to the Chaos microscope and then look at it more closely. We're now taking also dental silicon peels across here to get the morphology, and then we're using CT scanning to characterize that morphology. So that's what's going on. In terms of taphonomic questions about erosion, things that Desmond and Clark are worried about, we use the flume tank to assess the impact of abrasion in a sandy matrix over a period of time, with control sample. And after 2 weeks constant river action, what we found was that we have a set of starting chops and marks. You can characterize them over 2 weeks to start to degrade. The contrast on the marks is diminishing. So over thousands of years, or certainly over a long wet season, you can imagine you are going to get a fairly soft surface, not soft surface, but a fairly blank surface. What was interesting, what we were looking for, does the sand as it flows add anything to the wood? No. That's interesting. But Desmond's probably right. The river probably took away a lot of that evidence further down. We were lucky, really lucky, by the clay and the clay covering of the wood protecting it. That's what makes this particular area so valuable. Reference interpretation based on using same raw materials of stone and we brought back from Kalambo to wood of a similar density. So this is a scraper marks here, handheld. You can see that they're linear, but they're also slightly irregular. Put the scraper in the handle, look what you get. Wow. And that's what we're seeing on the inside of construction. With percussion experiments with a wedge, casting of small cleavers to see how they work. They do cut through the wood and give a series of stepped marks. Whoops. Ethnographic work. This project has just now come to an end. The British Museum's Endangered Material Knowledge Program. So I spent time with colleagues from the Moto Museum in Zambia who were trained ethnographers. So my undergraduate degree and PhD in anthropology, never did any anthropological fieldwork. So thank you to the British Museum for the training. We were looking at the 3 remaining makers of bark cloth in Zambia. They're not just makers of bark cloth, they make drums, they are woodworkers. It's half the tool for bark cloth making. I was interested in his workshop, his Black and Decker workbench here, which is a log. It's got a random series of marks on it, but it's got these chop marks at both ends. It made me think of that piece that we have from BLB4. And I couldn't let you not see what traditional bark cloth clothing looks like. It's amazing, it's stunning. So it's patterns from Chandra. And we were looking at his adzes and we were looking at his axes, and though they have a metal blade, there's a difference in the width of the axe blade to the adze blade is similar to that you see with stone axes and stone adzes that we're picking up. They leave differences in depth. In a sense, there's some continuity here. We can actually get something of value from looking at metal workers today. And finally, we're looking at archaeological sites of relevance in terms of similar woods. And there is a famous site in Zambia, which is so famous nobody knows about it anymore. In its day, it was famous in the 1970s. It's called Guisho Hot Springs. You recognize it, great. Yeah. Do you want to tell us about it? Yeah, there are. So it's like 32 human remains. From there, we look carefully for ancient DNA. It doesn't survive. This is a waterlogged site. It's a village. The actual huts are collapsed down on top. So all the wood is there, all the wood tools, but also the bones of not just the people, but things they were eating.
The people are in the British Museum, in the Natural History Museum.
It shouldn't be. It should be in the Livingston Museum. I'll have a chat about that. I'll tell you that. Okay. So from the huts, we're getting digging sticks. These are identified by digging sticks we found today, foragers in the Kalahari. They're not that much different from things that Desmond was finding in terms of shape. Not that much different from what we found. Nearly finished. Appreciate your patience. Conservation work took place at New York. And the stuff came back 2023 April. And that's why we haven't quite sent the wood back to Zambia. Zambian colleagues are saying, where is it? Where is it? That's why it hasn't gone back. We're still doing things here. So this is the top piece. To do a complete mapping of all the shaping marks and their directionality. So the legend here is the vertical shaping marks are in green, the more horizontal ones are in purple, and then blue, the two tapered ends, and then shaping across the top, flip it over, you can see the ends are marked heavily underneath. And that's that circular area we saw earlier. But look inside the notch, it is massively attended to. That we didn't know it was that intensively marked. Okay. This is the thing, the digging stick you've now seen several times, and then coming back from conservation work, all of them, you've got the grain. Well, much of what you see is the working, the scraping with the grain. We can work that out through the morphology. We can pick up the entry mark of the stone tool and the exit mark. Brilliant. I feel like this is the great pottery throwdown. I don't know if anybody watching. You should watch that. Anyway, so this is the other piece from BLB3 next to the wedge. When I saw it, I gave it a label, morphological label. Anybody want to put a label on that? So what was that? Mallet. Black and Decker. Okay. My interpretation was more anthropological. I said boomerang. But this is part of the reflectance transformation imaging. When you take the photos, the object stays in one place, and you take the images from a fixed distance at different angles, breaking angles all the way around. These reflecting balls, and these are pool balls, they measure the incident of, the software measures the incident of the angle reflection. And that then comes up on the analysis. This is a different wood, this is fig. And what we're seeing, shaping all over this thing right down here. We're doing CT scan of it to see where the wood is being moved. And then all of this, you're not allowed to know. So, yeah, I'm quite excited about it. Finally, who do you think made this? Well, I told you early on, the Homo sapiens were about 300,000. We're talking 500,000. Who might be the artisans? We have in Zambia this, it's not in Zambia at the moment, this is an issue. This is in the Natural History Museum. But it comes from Zambia and from a place called Kabwe or Broken Hill. It's a beautifully preserved cranium of species Homo heidelbergensis, also now being called Homo bodoensis. Kenneth and Kenneth brothers, reconstruction. I love the reconstructions because they humanize early hominin ancestors. The time range works, but certainly the upper part of the Kalambo record, the more recent part easily falls in Homo sapiens. Just and before the dates came in, and this is my bias, all of that stuff we were seeing, the structure, I said, this is Homo sapiens. Even though it has Acheulean tools, I said, this is possibly Homo sapiens, because I just bought into this idea that we are the ones. But we end on this. What has Kalambo done to me and to others? Your thoughts would be welcome. How has it changed perception on the past? Well, first thing that I hadn't realized, I hadn't even thought about the working trees. It's really something basic. We take it for granted. They have the technical capacity to do that. Even if the trees are already falling, you have to get them when they're green and then get into them. The tools we're finding are not, with the exception of the digging stick, are not about subsistence as far as we can tell. That's interesting. So wood is part of more domestic range of activities. Why not? This statement here is comes out of thinking about how we portray tropical hunter-gatherers as highly mobile populations, moving with the seasons, and maybe even before that. But what we see at Kalambo Falls, I've said here, is an investment in the place. Using the trees, perhaps shaping the environment. I put in the paper, the nature paper, this is built environment. It's a stable landscape. And when you look at the range of stone tools they made, there are over 30 different shapes recognized by Clark and by Maxine Kleindienst. There's different forms of bifaces. It's a huge number. There's more typological variability than I see with the Middle Stone Age. Yeah. Okay. And I think this is the controversial bit. Except that this is combinatorial technology as a concept, it's in wood first. It may not last as wood first, but it's there in a concept that is being applied to different material. That has implications for cognition. I think that's what's really interesting. It's not us, it's an earlier version, earlier human. And that leads to the conclusion here. I think we have been overestimating the differences between us and other human species. And there's a long running debate about Neanderthals and Neanderthal cognition. Well, I think we could have a vivid debate about heidelbergensis or whatever you want to call it before Homo sapiens and cognitive diversity. Yeah. What next? The university would like me to put together a big project, a lot of money, lots of EU funding for the rest. For the rest, those you're not familiar with this, research enhancement framework. I'm investing my time on this. I'm working with the government of Zambia for the National Heritage Conservation Commission to help preserve the surrounding environment, particularly the forests, because they are the catchment area of the Kalambo River. And we think the river has increased in activity as the forests have been chopped down for basic daily needs. There's a question about raising local awareness of the impact of the work. I wonder how this is going to play out, because if you need to cook, you need to keep your family warm because it's cool in the wintertime, and then somebody comes along and say, well, keep the forest because we want to make this a tourist place. There's ancient wood here. That's not easy, is it? It's not an easy sell. But these are some of the comics. But the funding is from the IRSL, Arts and Humanities Research Council. So I'm going to end on it. I wrote this down this afternoon. in the century. And this is Darwin. I think this is relevant to what I've just been talking about. Darwin said in 1859, the crust of the earth with its embedded remains must not be looked at as a well-filled museum, but as a poor collection made at hazard and at rare intervals. Kalambo Falls is one of these places of hazard and rarity. Thank you for your attention.